So we aren't denying the fact that we can't live without plastic. That's why we see recycling as the best alternative you can take to create a better impact towards the environment. The amount of plastic we use is damaging the environment. So we need to take concrete action that can give a long-term impact. And in order for that to happen and change to happen, the current campaigns and movements are not enough. Just having the choice to live a sustainable lifestyle is not enough here, which is why we think it's a better choice to criminalize individuals and organizations who do not recycle. Now, how much plastic production companies produce is a concern. These companies use plastic as additional income to their pockets. They see it as just like something something I can take for granted, right? Like they get a lot of income from the amount of plastic that they use on their products. It can seem beneficial for them, but this action has an impact towards the world's environment, which is why it's important for us to take action, and a good option is recycling here. As consumers who use a product, we can at least sort out the plastic that we already use, reduce the amount of plastic we use, and recycle what we already have, and not just call all our waste as trash. We can really create good out of what we already have, and it will be a good way to save the environment and the day. Now, our mechanism of criminalization. First, we will force the government to actually take these regulations about recycling, because then after they actually create those regulations, and they can be like follow-up regulations or like follow-up rules, and then the society will actually take it seriously once it's made into a regulation that actually has consequences or punishments towards those regulations. And then second, individuals and organizations who do not follow will be given punishment or like sent to court or whatever, like according to how big of the rules that they actually break. Like for example, if like big organizations or bigger companies do not recycle, then they will be, of course, be given granted like bigger punishments like the sense of court and whatsoever. Now, third, if not succeeded, we will do radical protest to the government until we get heard, because this is a serious problem. Like where our environment is not going to be able to like, we're not even sure if our environment will be able to like have clean water like in the next 5 or 10 years in the future. So that is why we need to actually take concrete action to actually create change in the world for our environment. Now, moving on to the argument. First argument is why recycling is the best alternative. Second is why criminalization. Third is how this will create behavioral change in society. And the last would be how this will affect activism. Now, for my first point in the argument, why recycling is the best alternative. Having a sustainable lifestyle is still not as affordable for those from remote areas, right? Like we need to understand that not everyone is able to use tote bags or water bottles. That can be better for our environment. The difference in economic level, for example, or like economic level of society, and like people are not able to like actually get to like a live a sustainable lifestyle if they wanted to, or like because they don't have as good of access towards like a better environment, or like a good like cloth bags or like a reasonable water bottle whatsoever. And like even if they are like able to afford them, like they might not be like educated enough. Like you need education, you need to be like educated enough about what's going on to our environment, and also I need to be able to actually afford that like economic or financial wise. And then the possibilities of recycling to be done by a company is also like is higher than like for them to like just cut off the amount of waste, like amount of plastic that they're using, right? Like once they start to recycle, then they can actually use what they already have, and then like reuse it. They can recycle what they already have, and then use it for like the next production whatsoever. And it's actually there's a higher chance of them to follow if we do recycling by the companies and like make regulations about this. And also like individuals will be more like there's a higher possibility or chance that people like recycle after we actually make some sort of a regulation, or it's actually like have like a regulation that has a punishment by the government. Now, why criminalization? Current politics and movements, current policies, and movements are not enough. In Bali, for example, the government has already tried to create policies where people aren't allowed to use plastic, right? But of course, because there's no punishment towards the current policies that they already made, then the people feel like there is no need for them to actually follow the policy or like the regulation that is already put into place. Like we actually, because like these movements and through these policies like that are now like already made with the government, there is no punishment or consequence. Like it's just a choice for people to make. And when these choices don't have like big punishments or big consequences, and they think that they can get away with it easily, right? Like people probably can like get away with not throwing away like or by using like plastic, or like by not throwing plastic like in the right places like very easily, because there's no consequences if they do like abandon the rules and whatsoever. Now, urgency. We see this as urgent because, like I said before, in the few years in the future, there's no in a couple of years in the future, there is no guarantee that our next generation that comes after us will get to have a clean earth or clean water on Earth. This is why that we see like the environment as something we really need to take action towards, and something we really need to change our actions, like, and actually need to create concrete rules, like by setting regulations and rules about recycling, right? Now, the pyramid of criminalization. Now, we would like to criminalize things like if the principle of criminalization happens when something gives a big impact or like damages something like a lot, right? Like it's a big impact. Now, we can see that the plastic actually does give a huge impact towards our environment. Like I said before, like I keep on saying, there is no guarantee that we will get clean water by like the 5 years in the future, which is why like we can see a lot of impact that plastic has actually created toward our Earth. Like our Earth is dying, and if we do not criminalize people, like if we do not criminalize these people, like, or these individuals for their actions, or like by not recycling in this case, then there is not going to be any concrete action that's actually done. Like when they're criminalized, then there will be like such morality too, right? Like there is also like public consideration to be taken into concern, because they wouldn't like to be seen as bad, and like they have to follow the regulations that are already made by the government. Now, moving on to my next argument, how will this create behavioral change in society? We need to understand the characters of society. With the campaigns and movements and actions, that is still not enough, right? From those movements, the people in society have an option or a choice to change their lifestyle. But the thing is, not all people are able to live a sustainable lifestyle because they're able to access, let's say, tote bags, right? Like we can only find tote bags in bigger modern malls or supermarkets, and those from like remote areas, for example, like in traditional markets, there are only like plastic bags, right? Like the only choices that they have to use, like the only access they have is to things like that are mostly made of plastic, and that is not good, and of course not sustainable for our environment. Now, even if they are financially or economically aware, like are able to like for these, but maybe like not all people from remote areas are also able to actually have get access to good education and are not socialized enough towards their environment, or like changing the environment, living a better lifestyle, or having like taking care of the environment, right? Like people, like even if they are like able to, they might not be aware of like what they can do to actually change their lifestyle and actually make a better environment. As we know and can see, the regulations and efforts that instead was not enough. There aren't any like concrete rules and regulations made that provide consequences for the individuals that don't live sustainable lifestyles and do actions that damage the environment. So there will be like two outcomes. Right? First, like by forcing people to do this because of the law of punishment, and that will of course change how they act. Because when they are forced or there's punishment to do this, and they see that they actually like see it as a serious case, right? And then second, when criminalized will be socialized, like it will be more intense, right? Like for example, alcohol is banned in many areas, and no police are more intense in actually finding cases that are tied to like to alcohol, and then there will actually be concrete and intense action taken when criminalization is actually made into regulation. Now, how will this affect activism? The activism now are still conventional, right? Like movements and everything, campaigns and everything are still short term. Regulations by government don't have any consequences. This is why criminalization will create a legal standard. It has a bargaining position to talk about the problems that are already happening, and more change can actually happen, and to create a better environment. And that is why we're so proud to propose